Hey Merfolk fans, I'm Joe. Thanks very much for joining me today. If you'd like to support my channel, please check out the link above to my Patreon page. I'm here with a replay of round 2 of a Modern League, currently 1-0 after beating Esper Monastery Mentor in round 1. I won the die roll this time, which is pretty great. So what do you guys think of this opening hand in this round? We can obviously play Magic, right? We play the Mutavault, get the AEther Vial. Obviously, we hopefully want to draw some lands. But even if we don't, we get to take AEther Vial up, potentially go from 2 to 4 to get to Master of Waves. So for me, in the past, I probably would have kept this hand some percentage of the time. Certainly on the draw, it becomes a little more appealing because you have an extra chance to rip the lands that we need. But especially on the play, this is a mulligan for me. If we don't rip lands, we're just going to be stuck to deploying 1 creature per turn. In the crazy scenario where the opponent can bounce our AEther Vial or even destroy it, we're just basically lost. And our deck mulligans pretty well, and there's not really a compelling reason to keep such a potentially sketchy hand. Even if we do draw lands here, we need to rip 2 blue to be able to cast spells. So a mulligan for me. And I was rewarded because this is a way better hand, especially with a scry. The opponent kept 7, and Trickster definitely goes on the top. So we'll start off with Island and AEther Vial here. It's possible that you can make the case for leading with Mutavault, because if the opponent thought seizes a spreading seas out of my hand, I'm going to want to be able to attack with Mutavault next turn. Actually, in hindsight, it probably would have been strictly better to run out the Mutavault first, because we know what our top deck is. It's going to be that Trickster. Sometimes in this kind of a situation, you'll want to lead with the Island because you'll have double blue spells in hand, and you might rip a second Island and then be able to play the double blue. But I know that my next top deck is going to be Trickster. So if I lead with Mutavault, I can still play the Spreading Seas if it's still in my hand. But if they take the Spreading Seas, then I could attack with Mutavault. Looks like the opponent doesn't have hand disruption, leading instead with Delver of Secrets, a card that used to be more popular in Modern, might be making some kind of a comeback. I think I've been seeing it a little bit more in recent months than like in the past year in general. They do give us access to Island Walk, but this kind of a deck typically runs a ton of removal, so it can be difficult to fight through all that. Vial will go to 1. There's that Trickster, and Trickster's pretty sweet against Delver. In the past, what I've tried to do sometimes is if they attack with the Delver, if it's an Insectile Aberration, once they attack, you can flash in Trickster to tap it. Well, it's already tapped because it's attacking, but take Flying away and try to trade with the Delver. Often that won't work because they'll go to attacks with mana up, and they'll be able to bolt your Trickster or Fatal Push your Trickster. So in general, I mean, Delver is the quintessential tempo deck. Merfolk gives it kind of a run for its money, but Delver is pure tempo. They run out a 1-drop that can become a 3/2 flyer that they then sort of protect with some counter spells and remove the opponent's threats with cheap removal, and they just keep punching in with a 3/2 over and over and over again. So basically, what we want to try to do with Trickster against Delver is just take it out of combat. Even before it attacks, just tap it down. If they remove your Trickster, you're still not going to take damage from the Insectile Aberration. So since it's the only real thing I can do here, I'm going to go ahead and take them off the black mana. And another Trickster's pretty sweet. As I was just mentioning, we want to just slow their clock down. This guy always blind flips on turn 1, so not really much question about that. The opponent revealed a Force of Negation, so we're not the only deck that's trying that out. Opponent goes with Thought Scour and a Spire Bluff Canal. So that represents Bolt. Nothing I can do about this attack this turn. We're going to go down to 17 and flash in Ben at the end of the turn. Now AEther Vial gets to go up to 2. We get our defense going with Merfolk Trickster. Relic is pretty sweet since it's something we can play, and they almost definitely run some amount of Snapcasters. Let's go ahead and get in with Ben. We went in before playing anything because if they tried to bolt him, we may have wanted to adapt. Possibly not, just because I quite like the contents of my hand at this point. And we would like to get the Relic onto the board. All right, start chipping away at their graveyard, and we'll pass the turn. All right, opponent plays a Scalding Tarn, and here's a young Pyromancer. It's another potential target for Trickster. We can turn him off, like in their upkeep, but unlike Mardu Pyromancer, which plays a bunch of sorceries, Collective Brutality, Dreadbore, stuff like that, whereas Trickstering them in their upkeep can take them off of sorcery token value, this deck is running almost entirely at instant speed. They do have Serum Visions, but pretty much everything else is going to be an instant. The opponent wants to go to combat, and as I mentioned a few times now, I'm just going to tap down the Aberration. If they have a Bolt, they can use it, but I'm not going to take 3 from this flying creature here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and crack this Relic right now, get some value. Force is pretty sweet. Doesn't really work well on my turn right now. I'm going to keep this Vial on 2 for the time being so that I can use Trickster during their combat. Another Spreading Seas. Not super amazing, so I chose just to activate the Mutavault. If the opponent wants to trade a young Pyromancer for the Mutavault, they can do that. Alternatively, if they had like removal to make an elemental, I didn't want to attack with Benthic Biomancer and just have them eat, or rather trade with Benthic Biomancer with just a token. That would be terrible. So looks like the opponent doesn't have any 1-drop removals here, because otherwise they would probably use it. All right, and that's about all I can do for the turn. Things going sort of okay for us. We're pretty tight on mana. If they go for like Mulligan's Command on their turn, we do have a Force, which is pretty sweet. All right, opponent untaps, goes to combat, and once again, I'm just going to tap down this Insect. Trying to pull ahead of the opponent in tempo. You can see that, we're winning the race right now, but without these Tricksters tapping down this Aberration, we'd have taken 6 more damage and be at 11 instead of 17. All right, no attacks with the young Pyromancer. They play a land, still have 5 cards in hand, and at this point I am going to take the AEther Vial up. So part of keeping Spreading Seas in hand is to have something to pitch to Force of Negation. We are going to want to be able to protect this Master of Waves, and that land is actually pretty nice because now we can just hardcast Force of Negation if push comes to shove. So as with last turn, I'm going to get in with my 2/2s here. Opponent has a Snapcaster, but no value out of it since I ate away their graveyard with Relic. So already in this league, we've seen some nice value out of Relic in game 1s. All right, opponent's just going to trade a Snapcaster for a Trickster. That's fine with me. The opponent drops down to 10, and at this point, I guess I want to adapt Ben. Might as well do something with my mana. The Spreading Seas isn't doing much, so if I have to spend Force of Negation on their turn, so be it. I'll pitch the Spreading Seas, but better to do something with our mana than nothing, I guess, is the idea. So Silvergill Adept is way better than Spreading Seas, so I'm going to go ahead and keep that, pitch the Spreading Seas, and see what the opponent has. Down to 9 after cracking that fetch land. Go to combat here, and no more Tricksters, so I think I'm just going to have to take 3 from this Aberration. Tapped Steam Vents, possible that the opponent is flooding a little bit, and we're going to take this AEther Vial up to 4. Another Spreading Seas. So I had to think a little bit here about the best line, because I'd rather not reveal that I have the Master of Waves, although it's not really such a useful tactic because the 4 on AEther Vial pretty much gives away the game. The opponent probably expects that I have a Master of Waves anyway. Getting another creature on the board seems solid. They could eventually develop an elemental army, but it's going to be hard for them to win that way if the board is really gummed up. So it seemed like starting with Silvergill Adept revealing Master of Waves was a pretty solid way to go. Now, Relic, it's a 1-drop. It's something we can play, so it's decent. It doesn't really change the situation too much one way or another. The opponent's got 4 cards. One of those could very well be a way to deal with Master of Waves. I'd love to be able to cast Force of Negation for free, so we typically wouldn't bring Master of Waves in on our turn anyway, but it's a massive extra incentive to wait until the opponent's turn. Even if, for example, we were going to be able to buff the Mutavault attacking with Master of Waves, we wouldn't want to bring him in on our turn, because if the opponent has a Fatal Push, say that they play an Opt, create an Elemental, block with the Elemental, turn on Revolt, and then Fatal Push the Master of Waves, we wouldn't be able to cast Force of Negation. So I'm going to be waiting on that. Again, for my attacks, I'm just going to get in with the 2/2s. Opponent has a Bolt. I think, yeah, they went for the Devotion here, and again, I really wanted to wait for the opponent's turn, so I'm fine with them bolting the Trickster for now. I'm still gonna have 4 Devotion on the board when Master of Waves gets played, so have to play patiently, let that creature die, and then what is the opponent gonna do with this attacker? All right, so they choose to take it. They didn't jump with the Elemental, and I'll just follow up with this Relic that we drew. Okay. So opponent, I guess I gave him something to use that Force of Negation on. Kind of forgot he was sitting on that. Which is fine. He gets another Elemental. We're still in a very good spot here. So what happened that turn? The opponent used a Lightning Bolt, and they pitched a Force of Negation to another Force of Negation, going all the way down from 4 cards to 1 card. After their draw step now, they have 2 cards in hand. So they played a fetch land, which at this point makes it very, very unlikely that the last card in their hand is something that can deal with Master of Waves. All right, so they're going to get in with the Elementals and the Delver, I guess the Insectile Aberration. I'm going to use this opportunity to flash in Master of Waves since he has Pro-Red. There's no reason to not put him in front of one of these Elementals. Opponent cracks his fetch land, turning on Revolt, and I kind of see where this is going. It seems like this is always what happens. Like the opponent has 1 card left in hand. They draw a fetch land, able to turn on Fatal Push. Fortunately, we have this very nice new card in hand, which I'm able to pitch with this useless Spreading Seas, counter the Fatal Push, get a bunch of Elementals. As I mentioned, we have 4 Devotion, eat one of those Elementals, and the opponent's pretty dead on board here, and they scooped. So pretty straightforward game 1. The Tricksters were kind of important in slowing down the attacks from the Insectile Aberration. And Master of Waves was great there for closing things out. You know, he is weak to more removal now in the format than he was when he was printed, but he still survives, you know, Terminate, or rather just totally dodges Terminate, Kolaghan's Command, Lightning Bolt. The opponent has to use their black removal to get rid of Master of Waves, and as you saw, you know, we have nice ways to prevent that from resolving. So great game 1 for us. Let's go ahead to game 2 and see how that one went. Hey guys, back for game 2. The opponent will be on the play. Let's check out the sideboard. All right, easy choice to take out the 4 Spreading Seas. Those, as you saw in game 1, were pretty much only useful to throw away to Force of Negation. Let's see, what else did I take out? Took out a couple of Force of Negations. The deck does run a lot of non-creature spells, but they're getting value out of them with Young Pyromancer, even if I counter them. And it's kind of a grindy matchup, so it didn't seem like I needed to keep in all the Force of Negations. Typically, we only really want 4 Force of Negations, I think, against decks that have either super fast combos that we need to be able to stop, or really, really powerful spells that we need to be able to counter, like, you know, Teferi or other big planeswalkers. It's still a pretty decent spell, as we saw against the Fatal Push at the end of game 1. I was able to counter that and then just win. But I trimmed down to 2 for the second game here, choosing instead to swap in a couple of Deprives, which can counter something like a Young Pyromancer or a Delver, or really, you know, anything. Deprive is, you know, our broadest counterspell that we run. So let's see, took out 4 Seas, took out 2 Force of Negations, and 1 Benthic Biomancer. So that's 7 cards out, and the island, so that's 8 cards out. I brought in 3 Echoing Truths, 3 Dismembers, and 2 Deprives. So a lot of nice answers to their creatures. Let's see how the opening hand looked. Really nice cards. Unfortunately, that Relic is not an AEther Vial. If it was, I would definitely keep, but you have to have some discipline when it comes to mulliganing, and my hardest rule for mulliganing is I never ever keep a 1-land hand if it doesn't have an Aether Vial. Even though we've got a 1-drop, we've got some card draw, we've got another 1-drop with Relic, it's just way too risky for no reason. So I'm going to mulligan. The opponent kept 7. And what did I get for my 6? So I was saying I don't keep opening 7s with 1 land, but I will keep opening 6s with 1 land, provided that land is an island, and I've got, otherwise some decent action going on. And this seemed to fit the bill, so Aether Vial on the top is definitely going to stay there. That was a great scry. See if the opponent has the turn 1 Delver again. Just Inquisition. So they took the Lord, which is interesting. They chose not to take my 1-drop. So there's that Vial we scried to the top. Pretty excellent. Opponent goes with Thoughtseize, more hand disruption, and they strip the other Lord. So at this point I have no creatures. Opponent probably feels pretty smart, but we've got something like 30 creatures in the deck, so not going to last too long. Aether Vial is going to go up to 1. Don't draw my second land yet. It looks like the opponent kept an opening 7 with 1 land, which is pretty greedy. So they've already whiffed on lands once. Start chipping away at the opponent's graveyard. All right, so they only whiffed on turn 2, found a Steam Vents, and they're going for a Delver and then another Delver. All right. So if those guys flip, it's going to be pretty scary, but we do have this Echoing Truth in hand. Go ahead and tick Aether Vial up to 2. Drew a Mutavault, which is pretty sweet. And at this point, the opponent has already hit their life total pretty hard, and if we start leaning on it, it can be pretty difficult, I think, for them to stop our attacks. This Silvergill is going to draw me into more gas, so it seemed like the best approach to me, since I had this Aether Vial on 2, we're going to be able to play spells and play a creature here. I'm going to play the Mutavault after trimming the opponent's graveyard a bit, and then just bounce their 2 Delvers. It's basically a time walk against them because they're going to have to basically tap out again to replay those Delvers. All right, and then we'll go ahead and wait till the opponent's end step to flash in this Silvergill Adept. As you can see, I've drawn one of these Force of Negations here. All right, so they play out both Delvers again. I'm going to get Silvergill onto the board. And there's Master of Waves, which is pretty sweet. That's going to incentivize me to take up the Aether Vial so that next turn I'll be able to get Master of Waves into play. And that Silvergill was pretty sweet since I get to actually use my mana. All right, so play that Silvergill Adept. Drew a 3rd land. It's decent because we can crack the Relic if we want to. And we're getting closer and closer to this Master of Waves. I'm going to go ahead and punch in with the Silvergill Adept. If the opponent wants to trade off one of these guys, it's fine, because a single 3/2 flyer is sort of not too bad to deal with. We're at 20 life, and it's going to take them forever to kill us if they've only got one aberration. But the opponent chose not to take it, so I think it's a great example of really carefully choosing when to attack and when not to attack. As I mentioned, I would have been totally happy with a trade there. Even though my creature is bigger than this one, obviously the Delver can flip and become much bigger and evasive. So the opponent whiffed on their upkeep, which was a huge relief. Opponent chooses not to get in with their little 1/1s. They play a tap Steam Vents, and we're just going to crack the Relic at this point. So opponent responds by abrading my Aether Vial. I could have defended that with Force of Negation pitching Master of Waves, but obviously, that wouldn't really do very much for me. All right, Waterlogged Grove is a 4th land, and then for the turn, I draw an Echoing Truth. So as I mentioned, Echoing Truth is pretty sweet in these spots because the opponent's life total is already pretty low. So to me, it seemed pretty clear. Even though I had the opportunity to just slam Master of Waves, they could untap, play a fetch land, and then just kill Master of Waves. This way, again, it's a really powerful effect here because basically time walks them. I'm going to punch in for 6 damage here, including Mutavault. They're going to go down to 4, and if they just replay their Delvers, I can just attack with kind of impunity. At that point, they're going to have to start chumping. All right, they start off with Serum Visions. But there's really not a lot that can dig them out of this. Thought Scour didn't really hit very much, just a couple of lands. Play a Scalding Tarn, go down to 3, and I can't imagine they're going to do anything else except play out these 2 Delvers here. Alright, so that's what they did. I untap, draw a 5th land, not super helpful. And I think the clear play at this point is just to run Master of Waves out. Get the Devotion, and once we've made the tokens, crash in with the Silvergill Adepts. Now the opponent obviously has to block one at this point, but they choose to block both. Even if the opponent deals with Master of Waves, we've still got Mutavault in the wings. If we rip a Lord, that's going to be lethal. But the opponent scooped. So yeah, pretty strong match there. Pretty good showing from Merfolk against Grixis Delver. They had their Delvers. They had removal for our AEther Vial, a bunch of hand disruption. But without the young Pyromancer on the board, they really couldn't accumulate too much value. We had a couple of Lords. Obviously, the couple of Echoing Truth did a great job. We were able to cycle the Relic. And the 2 Silvergill Adepts, so much value just being able to keep refilling our hand with gas. We had a Force of Negation in hand in case anything crazy happened, like if they wanted to resolve a Planeswalker or Anger of the Gods or anything that we wanted to counter. But as it went, it was unnecessary, just sort of redundant safety measure, I guess. So 2-0 in both of the matches so far. Esper Mentor and now Grixis Delver. Please leave your comments down below. Let me know your thoughts on how this match went. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. And please, if you'd like to support the channel and all these videos that I make and encourage me to keep making new content, take a second and check out the link above to my Patreon page where you can pledge $1 or $2, help encourage me to keep making all these videos for you guys. As always, I really appreciate you tuning in. Please join me in the next video where I'll be back with round 3 of this Modern League. Thanks, guys. I'll see you there. Bye.